Hello and welcome back to Stones That Speak. I've been wanting to make this video for like a week and a half, and I have that feeling that you get when you have an idea and you haven't done anything about it for a while, and if you don't do anything about it, it just kind of dies, right? And I'm getting to the point where the idea is like, it's sick, and I need to make this video because I was very excited about this when I saw this conversation on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, talking about these things called egregores. Now, I want to set this up. This is a very politically charged, at least from some angles, thread that I'll be looking at here on the Thread Reader app because it compiles all these things together. This individual comes up with this concept of what is killing the human race. That there is some kind of force that is working towards less reproduction. Well, really, that's it. Like, there is a force in the world, based on this person's, like, overarching idea, that's doing less reproducing. And it takes all these kinds of different tactics and forms and ways of understanding, and its only goal is to make you not want to have babies. And he used this term in this thread, almost offhand. It clearly is something that he's familiar with, and his readers he expects to be familiar with, but I had never heard of it until I started looking into it. And it's the term Egregore. Cool name, right? Let's check out this thread and we'll dig into it. I'm not really interested in... I basically understand a lot of the ideas and I would say probably agree with many of the ideas that this guy's talking about. But he's coming at it from like such a weird other angle than I approach the world from that it's sort of difficult to comment on all the specifics. But let's dig in here. So here's the thread reader unroll of this thread that starts with this tweet. The problem with the world in a nutshell: bureaucratic technological society naturally self-assembles into an unfriendly superintelligence. Superintelligence is probably actually a better term than egregore, because you can kind of understand basically right off the bat what are we talking about. Oh, a superintelligence? Like you may not exactly get what that is, but you sort of have an idea. Egregore is more of an esoteric term, and he just drops it in right here, talking about, again, the extinction of the human race. Killing off the human race is hard, given that humans naturally don't want to be killed. But the feminist egregore doesn't have to kill us to win. It only has to stop us from reproducing. Well, what's an egregore? Let's go over here for the definition to the Theosophy Wiki, where they define egregore as a group thought form created either intentionally or unintentionally that becomes an autonomous entity with the power to influence. A group with a common purpose, like a family, a club, a political party, a church, or a country, can create, and I would say inevitably becomes, a egregore, for better or worse, depending on the type of thought that created it. So what this guy is talking about... Now, the Theosophy Wiki is coming at this from more of a... They're way more open to the spiritual, okay? And we're getting to the spiritual in a second. But this guy's just saying, okay, things organize themselves into a pattern that feels like it has intention and agency beyond the individual persons. And so there's the self-assembly aspect of, like, the origin of life. A new egregore needs a combination of information, primitive DNA, and a sheltered environment, a cell membrane. Then it needs to replicate that information to new places by copying itself. Now, this little chunk of tweet right here is super, super important. He's done something interesting here because he's gone down to the cellular level. He's talking about this thing. He's like, okay, this thing needs to have a wall around it of some kind. It needs to be able to operate on its own without invaders coming in, and it needs information, right? DNA. It's interesting to me that he's gone to the cell, because there's obviously another organism that needs to have some kind of a wrapping around it to keep it from dying, and also, basically runs on information, and that's a person. You gotta have your skin, gotta keep all your bits in, alright? And you gotta have your information up here in your head, or in your heart, or your soul, or whatever. Let's not go into the esoterics of all that right now. But right here he's talking about, like, there's this giant thing, let's say a family, right? Where some things are inside the family and sometimes things are outside the family. He's talking about bigger than a family, right? He's talking about a whole giant movement. But there's this giant thing, and it needs to have a wall around it. And here it scales up, right? We can see that the scale goes up to the city. So it's on the cell size. We're like, here's the thing that is the city, and there's other things outside that aren't the city. You can go up to the person. Stuff inside my skin is me. Stuff outside my skin is not me. Right? They give family, city, up to Egregore. Things are inside and outside the Egregore, and the Egregore protects itself. Everybody clear? Okay. And it's important to think about this scalability issue, because that's what's going to be coming around. That's really the fascinating thing to me about this, that he identifies this idea that, like, oh, wait a minute, this principle works down here at the cells. At an organ, right? An organ has the same thing. All right, there is the thing that is the liver, and there are things that are not the liver. This is important for the liver to be able to function. The liver can't go be a kidney. The liver needs to be the liver for the liver to function. And the kidney needs to be over there being a kidney with a boundary around the kidney, saying some things can come in and some things can go out, but this is my function, and, like, I've got my boundaries, right? And you scale up, like I said, from the cell to the organ to the whole person, and then he scales up again to the egregore, the super intelligence that is organizing itself. My hotkey stopped working. Give me a second. Alright, so here's the next interesting part to me. He talks a lot about feminism and transgenderism and stuff, and, like, to an extent, like, that's all true. Like, we kind of touched on this in the previous episodes about Epicureanism. If you wanted to give this egregore a name, you really should call it Epicureanism, because it's committed to atomism, right? It's anti-reproduction, and it runs on pleasure. All right, there's your trinity of Epicureanism. Those are your three pillars. Everything is atoms, so only matter, right? We're going to go all the way down to the very basic stuff, and then that's what everything really is. Don't have kids, because kids hurt, right? Or they might hurt, right? And that's sort of in with the live for the best pleasure that you can get. Now, like, the Epicureans, at least, were not as stupid about this as people are today, or they turn into gluttons. The Epicureans realized that was stupid, but still, the highest goal in life is to create pleasure, and so the modern Epicurean egregore has these three motivating factors. Okay. Now this is where it gets interesting for me. So he starts talking about religion, right? He thinks he's just now starting to talk about religion. When the university took over from the church as the intellectual center, we completely lost any explicit representation and enforcement of our utility function. It warms my heart to wake up every morning and think I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad I have a utility function. Boy, that just really drives people, their utility function. Anyway, could have said meaning. The church, to a significant extent, existed to preserve the human utility functions. You can see this in its teaching. I mean, this is a vast reduction, but in a sense, yes, there are teachings that say, hey, having kids is a good thing. Literally the first commandment, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth. Have kids, take care of the things around you. Be a gardener, right? Grow things and grow people. That, you don't have to be a Christian to think that those are pretty good ideas. I think you should be a Christian, but that's just me. The Christian religion plus teachings is a self-assembled guardian of a society's utility function. Man, this guy it just warms my heart to think about this society's utility function. What is that utility function? What purpose does it serve? He doesn't go into that, by the way. That's super irritating. He just assumes, well, yeah, there's a utility function. We're preserving this utility function. And there's no question in this thread. Now, I have not delved into this person's entire catalog of tweets and what they produce. I don't know them beyond this particular thread, so maybe they go into it more. But in my mind, a utility. That's in my kitchen, right? I have utilities in my kitchen. The utility of a thing is to serve something greater than itself. My refrigerator has the utility of serving to keep my food cold so that I can eat it for a longer period of time. My stove has the utility of warming my food up so that I can get more calories out of it than I would be able to if I ate it cold. And also to increase the taste and make my enjoyment, all right? Those things serve me. Let's think about that when this next tweet. That was very much the function they used to fulfill. He talks about they didn't understand the idea of utility function. I think I understand the idea of a utility function. I don't know that you do. And I'm getting excited about and irritated about this. The function they used to fulfill. Fair enough, right? Church is like, go out and have babies. Treat people right. Don't be stealing. Don't be lying. These are all things that, underlie a healthy society. Hopefully. They use the concept of God as a way to sidestep our innate bias toward moral realism, which is false. I'm too stupid to know what he's saying with that sentence. I don't know what moral realism is. Is it relativism? Is he talking about that? Can't figure that out. I'm sorry. You can write your angry comments at me about how I'm dumb. But essentially he's saying the church supported things that were good, and we wanted those, right? Why do this? Because God said so. Oh, okay. And now here he comes. No, that's not the right explanation. There is no God. I am interested here that he doesn't have a capital G on this second God. Let's make this a little bigger so you can really... There's no God. No little God. Now, what's the utility of all this stuff then? Right, we've talked about like, oh, there's all this utility. We have these functions that who do the functions serve? What is the utility of the human race surviving over becoming extinct? Why is one of those things better than the other? Even if you disagree about which one of those things is better than the other, where can you stand to say that there is such a thing as better and worse? What does that mean? Better for what? Better for who? You've constructed this whole thing about how this egregore is destroying society, right? And I didn't read through the whole tweet about transgender people and feminism and, people just watching porn, and I don't know if he talks about porn, but anyway, that's all part of it too, right? I can get my pleasure without making babies. All that stuff is, in this argument at least, all part of this egregore. Who cares? The human race goes extinct. Why is that a bad idea? Now, I have an argument for why that's a bad idea. It's because humanity was created in the image of God. All right? We are matter, dust of the ground, with his spirit breathed down into us. We mirror him in a certain way. All right? And that makes us a valuable part of his plan and gives us the responsibility to serve him and be a part of his pattern. Okay? My cells serve the utility of making up my organs. If they leave that utility, they become cancerous or gangrenous. All right? They've gone off and they've stopped serving the higher function. My organs serve the utility of keeping my whole person alive. If my whole person serves a utility, it must be to perpetuate, to give something forward and upward to something that is above me. And the frustrating thing is, he's saying there is no God, and he does lowercase g, no God. This whole thread is about a God. Okay? That's what he's talking about. He's talking about a God that came into the world to destroy humanity. A demon, if you will. Alright? He's got this whole thread about an organism that is formed of something, out of something and into something greater than a human person. And here's this other, this next part is great too. Why do this? Right? Why? I don't know why they say there is no God. That doesn't 100% make sense to me. We embody, what do we embody? An implicit utility function, and we need to do certain things to preserve it. Who says we need to do these things to preserve this utility function? Because it's not God, right? Previous tweet, we established there's no God, but also we have a duty to preserve the utility function. It is true that we embody things, that we embody spirits, because that's really what you're talking about. You're talking about spirits with this. And let me go back to the idea that this is scalable, right? And I'm going to steal this from DeHarding, okay? I have been reading recently The Hierarchy of Heaven and Earth, the unabridged, expanded edition of The Hierarchy of Heaven and Earth. Highly recommend that book. It's fantastic. And DeHarding talks about how everything exists together. And he says, look, you have a human person, and a human person looks out into the world and says, well, I'm a conscious living being. And I see other conscious human living beings that are like humans, like me. They have faces and arms and legs, and they talk and all this stuff, so therefore they are also conscious human beings. And there is this tendency to say, well, that's all. That's all the conscious living beings that there are. But if you go down to, say, as our friend did earlier, the level of the cell, well, what's the cell doing? It's trying to get stuff. It's hunting after food. It's trying to avoid death, right? It strategizes to get to the things that it needs to get to. It works together in a community to create the things that it needs to create. And if you were a cell wandering, let's say for the sake of argument that you are a cell, right? You're wandering around and you bump into a bunch of other cells, right? You're maybe a blood cell, and you're running through the veins of somebody, but to you, there's just this tunnel that you travel through, and sometimes you get washed one way and another way, and you're always going to work, right? You have to drop off the oxygen at the cell, and you got to pick up the garbage, and then you go back and you drop the garbage off in the right spot, and you go back to the lungs, and you're looking around you and you see all the other cells, and there's like plasma that you're in, but you keep bumping into like there's a cell that's like a skin cell, and you say hey to the skin cell, and then you see a muscle cell, and you say hey to the muscle cell, and you go back up to the lungs, and what's up lungs, and you're living your life as a cell. And let's, for the sake of imagination, say you can think, right? You can make a hypothesis or a theory about what is around you, and you say, well, look, all I ever run into is other cells. That's it. Now, the cells are in different, like, configurations and stuff, but that's it. Like, that's all that they're like, the only things that are really in the universe are other cells, and, I mean, sure, you can pile them up in different ways. And some cells that, maybe, let's hypothetically say you get a cell phone, right? And you can call a cell in somebody else's body, But you don't think of it another body. You just think of, oh, well, there's another pile of cells over there. And you talk to that cell, and they're like, yeah, no, all I see is cells, too. I'm pretty sure it's just cells. And then you start looking at the cells, like, okay, but there's stuff inside the cells. There's little organelles. These little things doing little bits inside of us, These... They're helping us work around, some of the trash that I pick up. An organelle brought it out to me and pushed through the cell membrane, and the cell membrane is a part of me. So I'm this cell, and I'm made up of parts. But really, underneath all of that is just cells. And maybe you even do the cell equivalent of figuring out that they're subatomic particles, or just regular, atoms. And you say, okay, well, yeah, there's atoms. I'm made out of atoms, obviously, but like. The only thing that really exists in the universe are cells. Well, you can go down further, right? You can go down to the level of the atom, or even the electron, right? Electron is zipping around in its orbit of the nucleus of some, let's say, a tin atom. Okay, atom of tin. I don't know how many electrons they have, but you're hanging out with your family of electrons. There's some of them that hang out in your orbit with you, and you can jump up to another orbit from time to time and talk to the other electrons that are up there, and down underneath you can see the nucleus, and that's a little different. But you look around yourself and you see, well, all I have are other little particles around me, and you can, let's say you look out with whatever eyes an electron might have, you sort of have the sense of the fields around. There's other particles, and they're in different, like, configurations, different types of particle stacks, let's say. They're stacked up in different ways, but, well, if you're a particle, all you ever really see is just other particles zooming around. And so the particle doesn't know that the cell exists. He might, if he's conscious. And DeHarding makes a really interesting argument for the idea of the consciousness of electrons. That might be a different video. But if you are a conscious electron, all you can know is an electron. But, of course, you scale up and you are now part of a cell. And the cell looks around, and all the things he can be conscious of are other cells. And the organs in your body, right? As far as they know, well, what is there? There's just other organs that I'm kind of squished up against, and there's a wall that keeps us safe, but, like, out there, there's just other, like, there's a bunch of other livers out there. Your liver, let's say, has a communication network with all the other livers, and he's like, yeah, man, sure is good that there's all these other sort of piles of organs that are kind of different that are carrying us around, but they're just livers. And then, of course, you get up to the person, and, like, you look around, you say, well, there's other people, and that's like the main thing in the world is other people. And you get to say things like, there aren't any gods, and there definitely is no God. Because even though you know about all that stuff underneath you, right? Because you're not stupid. You've been to a science class. You know what a cell is. You understand that it has all these little parts. You still understand those parts have smaller parts and that they exist in themselves, and those parts have smaller parts and they exist in themselves. But you say to yourself, okay, but now I'm the highest thing. There aren't any organizations bigger than me. And you go to work. with 1,000 other people who are also going to work at their jobs, right? And you become the body of a corporation, right? And this is something that I've been thinking about recently. Because I work at Walmart, right? So if you want to write off everything I'm saying is crazy, I'm just some guy that works at Walmart. You feel free to do that. You go to work at your local Walmart and you embody the corporation of Walmart. You give your body to become the body of Walmart. You are Walmart's little fingernail. Alright? They don't, just like your fingernail, they might cut you off, right? You're on the end if you're a lower end employee. But of course, there's people going up and up and up into the hierarchy. But even the president of Walmart isn't Walmart, right? In the same way that, there's no brain cell in your mind that is your mind, or even is knowing all the things that you know. But all together, these things make up a bigger thing. A bigger group, a bigger consciousness. And the frustrating thing about reading this tweet is that it's 100% ripped out of the Bible. And the idea of principalities and powers. And he's dissing the church when if you were just reading the Bible, you would have all this stuff already and you would understand, of course this is how it works. It's very explicit in two places. In Daniel, right, where he talks about the angel that comes, and he goes to Daniel and says, I couldn't get to you because I had to fight the Prince of Persia. What is the Prince of Persia in spiritual terms? It is the whole spiritual entity made up of all of the things that are Persia at that time, right? And if you have a king, the king is the avatar, right, of that prince. In a sense, he is the embodiment of, you look up to them and you say, okay, we have this person who is being this spiritual being. But when the king dies, the spiritual being that is Persia, the Egregore of Persia that wants to survive, right, and wants to conquer other things and wants to expand, doesn't die with the king. It just inhabits a new king. And here's this angel who is fighting against this spiritual identity that is made up of lots and lots and lots of people. The other place that it's really explicit in the Bible is in the book of Revelation in the first chapter, where there talks about being angels of churches. Now this used to be really weird to me. I didn't understand exactly what was going on with this idea that there being an angel of a church. I mean, I understood it on a basic level, just sort of okay, there's an angel, takes care of churches, I guess. But what I've now come to realize is that it's not just the idea that there is some guy, right, who is an angel, right? He's basically like me, but, he's just got more power, and God gave him, he just sits on top of the church or something and looks down. No. The angel of the church is the thing that the local church, because you have all these different churches, there's 7 angels in the book of Revelation, because he's writing to 7 different churches. That angel is the thing that church is giving body to. And then all of those churches are giving body to Christ. They are becoming the body of Christ. In the same way that my cells are the body of me, I am in the body of Christ. And I am also in the body of Walmart. Now these things need not be contradictory, although if you're part of a body that you think is antithetical to Christ, then you can't do both, right? But if you're just doing your job and it's, and I think about my job in the terms of hopefully being of service to God, right? And echoing his work, because what does God do? Well, he is the one who brings light, right? Light is the idea of being able to understand things that were previously confounded. And so what do? People come to me and they say, I can't find this. And I say, let there be light. It's over there. right? And what else do? I set things in order, right? I take and I say, flashlights go on this peg, and a different flashlight goes on that peg, and tarps go over here, and the guns stay locked up in the gun case so nobody can get them, and I keep all of the things in the right place where they need to be. And sometimes people come in and they try to destroy it, right? Little jackals come in and try to ruin my area, and they're coming over and they're bouncing the basketballs around. I just tested it out, man. I just seen if it worked. I'm like 18 years old, and I think you haven't heard this line before, and just trying to see if the basketball worked. And I'm like, begone, demons! Get thee away from my creation! Not my creation. But that's what God does, right? He's like, he's constantly fighting off the demons. They're trying to tear up his world and turn it into chaos, and I'm reminded of the story of Abraham where he fights off the birds that are coming down to eat his sacrifice. He's like, no, you got to get out of here, right? All of these things are part of the work of God. And it's so weird to have someone who's coming at it from a supposedly materialistic perspective to say, I've got this new idea, guys. I mean, it's not a new idea. It's older, right? I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's essentially a repackaging of an idea that's just in the Bible. And all you've done is put like some technobabble spin on it, tried to make it all about the woke wars, which doesn't go high enough. This is my issue with this whole thread, okay? It's not that I disagree about wokeism and that, like, I think that it's a problem that people aren't having kids, but it doesn't acknowledge that there is something highest, that there is really, and it's not even, to call it an egregore would be a problem, right? To call God an egregore, because God's bigger than that. And also, like, God just breaks all these categories, all right? But it does scale up in a sense to the tip of the pyramid. And to be like, well, I'm good at the church, man. That's not, those guys didn't have it right. They just believed in God. I believe in egregores. Repent. Repent of your pride and submit to the, what is your, I'm going to go, the implicit utility function of Jesus Christ. This is what you need to do. This is how you're going to win. You're going to win the way he won, which is by losing. But losing in the proper, perfect way. Give him body, because he is way and truth and life all together. All right? And he's worth giving body to because he gave body to you first. There is no other egregore that gives its body to you like Christ gave his body for us. We can give ourselves to him because he has given us himself first. No other egregore, spirit, God will or even can do this for you. So yeah, go out there and have kids. Put the world in the right order. Build the things that need to be built and to last for a long time, but understand that you are doing it under something. You are not at the top of the chain as the guy, and nor are you at the bottom. There is gross matter all the way down there, cells and molecules and particles. Those things are all underneath you, and there are things that are above you that you are a part of. Be a part of the right ones. Be careful what you are giving your body to and becoming the body of. You're halfway there, man. I don't know what the guy's name is that tweeted all this out. I'll roll him up. It's Rocco.eth is a crypto bro. Well, we'll pray for you, man. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope that you enjoyed this and found it at least somewhat useful. If you like this, subscribe to the channel. We'll be talking about more of this kind of stuff in the future. Take care, y'all.